Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest rendition of Tales from Outer Space. Taken from the subreddit HFY. All the relevant links will be down below. And as always, I hope that you enjoy, and if you do, please consider supporting the channel. Now, on to the science fiction. I would like to give a special thank you to Fallen Angel, whose support by being a Tier 5 channel member is very much appreciated and helps this channel continue on. Two perspectives of Professor Moore. Genetics is fun. Galactic Cycle 153234.61. Entry, Professor Clay Moore. As I am preparing for my first genetics class, I keep finding myself distracted. As much as I really enjoy it here, I find myself wishing for more human company. I find I'm spending a lot of time talking to the metal cat statue the Dean gifted me. My first class is over cells. I was surprised the Dean personally brought me the course material used by the prior instructor. Initially, I was very excited and thanked him for making the preparations much easier. Unfortunately, in preparing for the first class on cells, I found it consisted of literally 130 black and white hollow projections. I don't see how anyone could stay awake through that to teach the course, much less attend. I can now see why he brought my attention to how lacking the course material was and the utter lack of practical examples. That just won't do. I think I'll reach out to my friend at the Seoul Galactic University, Dr. Hellwitzer, on how he can spice this up some. Maybe I can even encourage her to consider transfer over. She always makes a splash with her courses. Galactic Cycle 153234.61. Entry Dean Edifice. I'm pleased to report that I believe I've finally got things under control. We have made it over 10 days without a single incident involving Professor Moore. What's more, no pun intended, we have also provided him with his course material. I personally reviewed it and found nothing that could be at all dangerous. When I presented him with the material, he thanked me for helping him get such a head start. We went wrong by allowing him to develop his own courses based on objectives rather than giving him standard presentations. I am confident this term will go smoothly. For the first time since his arrival, I haven't felt anxiety over what will happen in his next class. Galactic Cycle 153234.64. Entry, Professor Clay Moore. I finally heard back from Dr. Hellwitzer. Being the wonderful woman she is, she helped me overhaul the course based upon some of her past courses. She has also sent me a full collection of slides containing both animal and plant cells and a digital microscope that I can use to project them. She even included some extra slides where I think I can have the students explore their own samples of hair or skin. This class is going to be awesome. I have told her how great Dean Edifice has been to me, and she was also really happy to hear how well my courses have been received. Her dean has been a real stick in the mud. He is not allowing her to use practical exercise as effectively as I have been allowed. She said some of the Xeno students they have did not handle the more hands-on courses well, so Dean cut back on the interactive teaching. She is considering transferring, since her specialty is biomechatronic engineering, and she would love the opportunity to be at a university with such a wide variety of biodiversity. Anyways, she sent me plenty of fruit flies, tissue samples, and even some good ideas for practical exercises. She also mentioned a friend of hers would be getting in touch to provide me with some research assistance. Galactic Cycle 153234.65. Entry, Professor Clay Moore. I think I really got some students interested in genetics. Well, I was not surprised to find my class full. These were different races than I had in my prior courses. There was one race that really stood out. I have about a half dozen phylum people from Halrod 5. They appear to be plant-based species with almost no form of emotion that I can detect. They smell a little like bananas. Most of the class seemed interested as I explained that cells were the building blocks of life and began to show them different animal and plant cells with the hollow projector. I'm proud to say that I really got their attention when I pulled out my slides. When I asked if anyone wanted to see what their cells looked like, the class fell deathly quiet. So I said I'd show them some of mine, and I pulled out a piece of dead skin and put it in the microscope. After the first period, I even had some of the other professors join our class to see what the cells looked like. I believe this may be been their first introduction to seeing cells in a classroom environment, and they found it extremely profound. As a side note, I seem to have lost the fruit flies, and Dr. Watson's friend turned out to be none other than Mobad the Worst, the accidental space pirate. For many not familiar with Mobad, he is almost a legendary figure in human space. He got involved early on attempting cloning with DIY kit before the dangers were fully understood. No one is quite sure how old he is, to include himself. He was obviously a brilliant mind at one point, but somehow went from being an asteroid miner to a pirate hunter to pirate, ending with whatever he would be considered now. I have apprehensions about any help I receive from him. It could permanently stain my credibility. His sanity is questionable. Mobad offered to supply me with Synthetic Transfer Data Manager, STD, little more than a virtual intelligence. These devices were often used as personal assistants. They are not sentient or sapient, but generally capable of providing low-level help in managing the lab. Dr. Weitzer already paid Mobad for it, so I have accepted. Galactic Cycle 153234.65. Entry Dean Edifice. I probably should not be surprised at this point that Professor Moore has caused a stir with his first class of the term. To be honest, I was waiting for someone to run in to tell me about what crazy human had done next. He has apparently decided the course material was not sufficient, and naturally decided to augment his class with visual and practical demonstrations. I was unaware that he had a box containing samples of dead tissue. I'm not sure why this surprises me. Showing preserved cells as a teaching methodology is unorthodox. Normally, we only see this used in high-level medical programs. I'm not sure this belongs in an introductory level program where the risks are scarring the young students. The shocking part was that he proceeded to pull a portion of his own skin off to display before offering the students attending the opportunity to join the collection. Several students actually expressed fear Professor Moore may add them to his boxed collection. Given my past history with Professor Moore, and his past attempts to kill me with a monster, I thought I would send the head of the science department, Dr. Koulas of the Ka'at, to deal with him. Galactic Cycle 153234.66. Entry Professor Clay Moore. I must say that I had an amazing meeting with the science department head, Mr. Koulas. It was truly an amazing experience. I'm so glad Dean Edifice sent him to me. He was absolutely fascinated with the differences in how they have traditionally taught genetics and the material I'd gotten from Dr. Witzer. Apparently, this course has traditionally been oriented to why different xenospecies were so different. Evolution and genetic modification weren't even discussed. He told me there was not even considered an applicable science. After our discussion, Dr. Koulas encouraged me to try some of the new course material with the students. He felt that they would love some new material and was even going to encourage some of the professors to join the class. I've discovered my reservations about accepting Mobad's STD were appropriate. As soon as it was installed, a projection of a giant metal paperclip with two large googly eyes popped up and wanted to know if I wanted to open any documents. Of all the potential systems, I've been stuck with the modern version of Clippy. I'm not sure if Dr. Witzer or Mobad is to blame. Galactic Cycle 153234.66. Entry Dean Edifice. Dr. Koulas talked with Professor Moore and said he'd gotten Professor Moore to adjust the genetics class material. This term still holds potential for normalcy, something that I have not yet enjoyed since the force the human upon me. I am truly thankful for Dr. Krulis for helping in the matter, as I feel he has helped preserve my sanity. Oddly enough, we seem to be having a problem with the computing interface system across the entire campus. It took almost an hour to type this report because the holograph of what appears to be a curled metal construct with eyes kept appearing in front of me and tried to help. This malicious being wiped out my report 5 times. I can tell my inbox has a number of additional complaints about this annoying assistant, as it calls itself. I suspect sabotage on behalf of another school or a malicious race. Galactic Cycle 153234.67. Entry Professor Clay Moore. Today's class was awesome. I started the class by teaching the students about how DNA makes up cells and how its sequence gives the genetic plan. My students were shocked when I started talking about the Human Genome Project. I told them how we had started by studying inheritance, then evolution, and eventually started studying DNA, which led us to the science of genetic modification. Following the course, I had quite a few of the professors that Dr. Krulis had encouraged to attend come up and start asking me questions. I put several in touch with Seoul University's Advanced Genetic Department because their interest went beyond my understanding of genetics, especially of xenospecies. It seems many species in the galaxy have never considered genetics to be more than the study of difference in species. When I showed how humanity used them as a tool, it caused a lot of excitement. I think in my next course I'll talk about genetically modified organisms, hybrid plants, and how we've modified even our own genetics to eliminate genetic diseases and allow colonization on several of our more hostile planets. As a side note, Clippy's having a hard time with Galactic Standard and keeps trying to fix typos. This has apparently almost completely shut down the Xeno literature class. I've sent a note to Mobat requesting support in removing this STD, as I've now realized it installed it on the central data server rather than just my terminal. Galactic Cycle 153234.67. Entry Dean Hedifus. This term has almost seemed a vacation after the last two. Dr. Krulis has done an amazing job at staying on top of Professor Moore. On an interesting side note, it appears a number of our staff members have started reaching out to the Seoul University. As an effect of this, they are putting in for a new research grants. I'm excited as this will bring a lot of opportunities for an applied science research division. If it keeps up with what Professor Moore has brought in, loath though I am to admit it, people are willing to throw money at the nut to research things no sane being would. While I can't blame Professor Moore, it appears a new crisis has arisen in our computing system. The metal construct pest that keeps appearing is now randomly changing galactic standard words and sentence structures. We did not realize how insidious it was until it edited all of the student copies of the intergalactic classical literature used in basic literature. The entire sexist race literature suddenly became inappropriate for a teaching institute. Why am I cursed by computing problems when I finally have Professor Moore under control? Galactic Cycle 153234.68. Entry Professor Clay Moore. So today's class started off great, but something odd happened halfway through. The class was really fascinated with the part of the course where I actually showed human evolution, and then started talking about how in EY 2050, our population hit a point where famine and severe food shortages forced us to start changing the genetic structure of almost all of our goods and livestock to allow them to live on other planets and produce even greater yields than we had ever previously achieved. When we started talking about the effects of genetic modification had on the human genome, especially combined with radiation exposure as we settled new worlds, as well as the new human subspecies that evolved, the class seemed absolutely stunned. Fearing I had gone too far for an introductory level course, I told them how long before we started directly editing genome structure we were creating hybrids through breeding. Well, explaining how the crossbreeding of a horse and an ass creates a mule, The class appeared entertained and curious. Yet when I talked about grafting fruit trees together to create new variations, though, it drew an odd reaction. I hadn't shown more than 2 or 3 samples when every phylum in the class suddenly got up and walked out. I asked some of the other professors about it later that day, and they said apparently every phylum in the Galactic University left the school today and headed home. Hope everything's okay on their home planet. Mobad has gotten back to me. He's going to get on site directly and help with our STD problem. I'm not sure if this is a good idea, but a mad genius could be helpful with some of my research projects. I do need subjects for some of the grant research that I've been asked to work on. Galactic Cycle 153234.68. Entry Dean Edifice. In the end is upon us. I received a formal war declaration from phylums of HFY. They have accused us of threatening the existence of the entire race by crafting and of sending invasive species amongst them. I don't even know what crafting is or what they're talking about. The Galactic Security Council has notified us that their entire fleet has mobilized. I've told the board and demanded an inquiry into what could have possibly started this. Galactic Cycle 153234.7. Entry Dean Edifice. We are in danger of having our higher learning institute wiped out by the phylum people because of Professor Boer. Grafting appears to be something humans did with plants to change the genetic properties. What crazy race actually tries to manipulate the genetic properties? That can only end in disaster. I still have no idea what invasive species they could be talking about, but have no doubt Professor Moore had to have been involved. It appears I was also wrong about Dr. Koulos' sense of ability to control Professor Moore. Instead of containing the deviant human, he had other professors sit in on some of his courses. These professors then somehow decided this was a great thing to research. The grants that they've been putting in for all derived from the genetic manipulation idea. What could have been easily explainable by blaming Professor Moore has become a department-wide scandal. The phylum already have a fleet of orbit around planned Galactic University and have imposed a blockade. The Galactic Security Council thankfully has come to our aid and are currently in negotiations with the phylum, as an assault here could trigger a galaxy-wide war given the species represented. Galactic Cycle 153234.71. Entry Professor Lbry. I was called to Dean Edifice's office today. There was a very large ka'ata I was introduced to named Norin, as well as a number of large phylums. I was shocked at how much the ka'ata looked like teddy bears. I had to resist the urge to hug it. At first, I was worried it might have been something I had done, but I think Dean Edifice asked me to be here to help him handle the situation. Once we started talking, the phylum youth appeared to have misunderstood what crafting was. They actually thought I was proposing we cut off parts of them and attach them to other trees. The adults were positively fascinated with crafting once they understood that it wasn't done on sentient plants. I am starting to think that these Xenos might not be ready for biomechatronics, and I should talk to Dr. Halwitzer out of coming. If they freak out about crafting, they might not be ready for prosthesis or cyber augmentation. Apparently, some insects have also gotten onto the phylum plant of HFY and were endangering the entire population by boring into them. I told them how the same thing happened on one of our planets and how Seoul University had used genetics ultimately to make the trees resistant to them and saved our produce. The Ka'ata even offered to help the phylum as a go-between with the Seoul University to prevent future misunderstandings. I know the Ka'ata had dealt with humans more than most of the galactic races, but this one seemed especially diplomatic. I still can't believe how much the phylums smell like bananas. It has been so long since I had one. Now I find myself craving them. Galactic Cycle 153234.71. Dean Edifice. I've seen it all now. I brought Professor Moore to our surrender today to offer him up as a prisoner with the recommendation of execution. To save the school, of course. I was shocked to see Galactic Security Council Chair run there in person and found myself at a loss for words. Before I could recover, Professor Moore started speaking with them directly. Had I not witnessed it firsthand, I would never have believed it. He not only convinced them that their children had misunderstood his lesson, but that these barbaric races' practice of genetic manipulation could save them from some sort of infestation. As a side note, the human research group DARPA has now offered Professor Moore a grant to study how to make humans hold up better in a vacuum of space. I would say that's impossible, but I've been around the professor for too long. I've decided to not give Professor Moore any courses next term. I no longer believe I can safely have him teach anything. Instead, I'm going to have him focus on his lab. Students wanting to be assistants can get a course credit for their bravery. As a side note, Council Chair Noran wanted to know if the specimen we froze survived. He was most displeased to find that we haven't taken that monster out of the cabinet. Gonna have to do that soon, but must come up with a plan for it first. Also, the metal construct appears to have auto-corrected my resignation letter, indicating that I wish to stay on in perpetuity. I obviously cannot submit this until I get this terminal fixed. The board is not happy. I'm not familiar with the Seoul University, but I wonder if I could possibly get away from Professor Moore by transferring there. Galactic Cycle 153234.72. Entry Professor Clay Moore. Mobat has finally shown up and removed the STD from the primary service of the school. He said that he would help by installing a far more helpful one, a claim that I was unable to substantiate as he had an idea where he could collect research specimens for my DARPA project. I should be back in a couple weeks. I sent Dean Hedifus and Dr. Koulis a note letting them know where I would be so they didn't worry. Galactic Cycle 153234.72. Entry Dean Hedifus. Professor Moore suddenly disappeared today. I had envisioned this as a much happier moment. Dr. Koulis and I received a message from him that was so garbled I can only assume that it was supposed to be a plea for help, a ransom note, or a list of groceries. The artificial construct likely struck again. Personally, I would wish the kidnappers the best of luck and call it a day. To my dismay, the board of professors and student bodies seem to be in a state of almost panic. They are already reviewing all lungs and hollow recordings from across the university in a massive sweep to find their beloved professor. God, I hope they don't find him. On the bright side, the digital metal construct with the big eyes is finally gone. Unfortunately, it's been replaced by a digital version of the monster Professor Moore gifted me. I have also collected the carbonate monster from his office while I decide what to do with it. At least, my situation seems to be improving. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.